Sit down straight, close the eyes gently. Deep inhale and exhale. And while exhaling, we are going to recite Om. Doing Om Jap, we'll focus on our own pronunciation. And then after that, Gayatri Mantra. And our focus would be on the Jap and the Mantra. Om Bhurabhuvah Swaha Tatsavituravareniam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayam. Joining the palms together, rub them gently, cover the eyes and slowly open the eyes below the palms. आज गुरुवार है और गुरुवार का सत्र जो है हमारा शंका समाधान का है और शंका समाधान में question and answers. That's the way we deal with Thursday program. So the floor is open. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself. If there's no question, then I would like to talk on one subject. Generally, June is celebrated by some Arya Samaj across the world as Satyartha Prakash month. Maharishi Swami Dayananda completed the dictating of the Satyartha Prakash. He was dictating that in June, and that's why. And when I say Arya Samajas across the world, in some parts of India, but in Mauritius, that's a big a long series of programs disseminating the knowledge of the Satyartha Prakash the whole month. And with its 250 plus Arya Samaj Mandir and another probably 150 Arya Samaj, which meets once in a while at the home of people because they don't have a mandir. And yet, that's the way they do it. Now, let's go into why and how of the Satyartha Prakash. How? Because when Maharishi Dayananda was doing his prachar, going across India to connect people back to the root scriptures, the Vedas. People requested him first to establish an institution that would carry his works when he would no longer be there. He agreed to that. And after deep contemplation, he came with the word Arya Samaj. Arya is not a new word, it's a word as old as the Vedas. And it doesn't occur only at one point in time, but at several places in the Vedas. Arya, it means people who are noble, not by blood or lineage, as we call it, but noble in their gun, karma, swabhav. Character, gun, karma, actions, and swabhav, the nature. Or take it on another level, noble in manasa, vacha, karmana, in thoughts, in words, and in physical actions. That's the definition of Arya. And Samaj means the congregation or the association of people who are Arya, that is, noble in thoughts, words, and actions. And after that, another question came to Swami Dayananda Saraswati. The Prachar Karya, the work that he was doing to disseminate the authentic Satya Sanatan Vedic Dharma. And grounding himself on the teachings of the Vedas and connecting people on the teachings of the Vedas. The question was, you need to write a book that will carry over the message that you are disseminating. And that book was the Satyartha Prakash. And to understand the Satyartha Prakash, it's best to read the preface, Bhumika, and understand it in depth. So many things in between the lines that we need to understand. And from that same point of view of understanding the Satyartha Prakash in the correct manner, Maharishi Dayananda himself gives the formula which comes from the Upanishad. And he's tried to maintain a consistency by referring to either the Vedas, the Upanishad, the Darshan Shastras, the schools of philosophy, and the Manusmriti, which is also widely quoted, especially when he talks about Raj Dharma, good governance. And the formula of understanding the Satyartha Prakash, which he mentions in the Bhumika, it's a 4-step process. The first one is Shravan, listening. Second one, Manan. Third one, Nidhidhyaasana. And fourth is Saakshaatkaar. So the first one, Shravan, because people were more listening in those days, and the Vedas are known as Shrutis because it was given down to line across generations by word of mouth. It came only in book form when ink and paper came into being. So that was handed over. And even before ink and paper came into being, there are still script written versions of part of the Vedas, which are in international libraries. which are on talpatra, on leaves, dried leaves. So these are things that we need to recognize. First one is Shravan, sunna, listening. And it's not the passive listening, it's the active listening. And within that, in the context of today, when we talk of Shravan, it's also reading. Because nowadays we have the books we can read. So that's Shravan. This is the first contact with the knowledge. And for whatever we want to learn in this world, even when a child is born, the first 3-4 years is only by listening. And listening is a very powerful tool. Shravan, we see that in the Mahabharata, where Arjun was describing the Chakravyu to his pregnant wife, and the wife fell asleep. The boy who was born had half of the knowledge of that, and the other half he didn't have. And he went into the Chakravyu, but he couldn't come out of it, and he was killed. So that's the power of Shravan, active listening. Then comes Manan. After listening or reading, we need to take time to contemplate on that knowledge and go into the depth of it. Give a second thought, a third thought to it. Now you start grounding yourself with that knowledge. The connection is better now. That's Manan. And often we hear during Pravatan, Manan Chintan Karna hai. So we need to contemplate on that. And the third step is Nidhidhyaasana. Nidhidhyaasana is putting questions to yourself on the knowledge. The questions for and against us in a debate. Because when you put the questions for and against, then you start analyzing the knowledge. And you'll find the right track from it, especially for the knowledge that are in between the lines. Because any author will write, but there are so many things which goes unexpressed, understood, as we say, in between the lines. So Manan and Nidhidhyaasana enables us to unfold that part of knowledge, especially. And from there on, where do we reach? We reach the fourth step, Saakshaatkaar, because from putting the questions and the answers, what happens? The next step is realization of the truth of the knowledge. Saakshaatkaar, realization. We can clearly see what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is not true. And from there on, we can build further and further in the knowledge. We can grow wiser. And it's not only bookish knowledge, which we have read, probably without understanding, or read and understood, but we don't know how to apply it in daily life. This is the technique. And this technique, the 4 words together, comes to one single word, which is defined as Svaadhyaaya. The key to it there is Shravan, Manan, Nidhidhyaasana, and Saakshaatkaar. Shravan, active listening or reading. I would include reading because of nowadays we read more than listen. Then Manan, contemplate on that. Nidhidhyaasana, go to the next step, putting question and answers. And when we realize that, that is Saakshaatkaar, the knowledge. And we see the practical applications of that even in modern day life, even in science, in all the research that is being done throughout the world. Take any problem of this earth, what do scientists or researchers do? They take that one problem and try to narrow it down and find the solution. They will take it from the very large scale and gradually, slowly narrow it down. And when that's narrowed down, this is where we get the solution out of it. Be it the discovery of a penicillin by Alexander Fleming, be it the interpretation of the law of gravity by Newton, or be it the, we say discovery, but it's more the application of X-rays by the Curie couple, or be it even the last pandemic which we suffered, the research to get the vaccine behind COVID-19. It started with taking the problem from the very large perspective, boiling down and coming to identify and isolate the virus, and from there on creating the vaccine. Even if you look at the problem at the economic level in any place of the world, you find probably thousands of reasons, but you look at the more important one and you address them. And when you address the more important ones, the subsidiary reasons just disappear from themselves. So this is how, even if we don't know these words in the world of today, but this is being applied. And that tradition of research, of understanding the depth of the knowledge, is the Vedic way of getting the proper education. This is how, if you want to understand the Satyartha Prakash, we go into the context. And from that perspective, there's another thing which Maharishi Dayananda raises. Just give me a minute, I'll just check the book and then that's the book of it. Satyartha Prakash in Hindi. And then in English, it's the light of truth. So the word Satyartha Prakash, Satya, Artha, and Prakash. 3 words there. It's given in English as the light of truth. So Satya is truth, Prakash is light, but then there's another word there, it's Artha. So in fact, it's the meaning of the light on truth. That's the way of going into it. And when Maharishi Dayananda goes into the depth of explaining us, we need to go on the contextual understanding of what's being written. And that applies also to any subject matter which we are studying. The first one is Aakaaangshaa. Aakaaangshaa, they are things which are said either by a speaker or written by an author, And there are some missing links which we need to fit in according to the context. And in Hindi, Maharishi Dayanand writes it, किसी विषय पर वक्ता की और वाक्यस्थ पदों की आकांक्षा परस्पर होती है. There are things which are said by the author, but he doesn't have time or space to go into the full details of it. And if you want to fill in the blanks, we need to look at the context. Yogyata. Now, what is the context? If I say burning, obviously it implies heat. Whether that's physical fire or a heated substance, or when I say irrigation, obviously it's with water. It can't be by acid or by alkali. So these are the things where we need to put things in the proper perspective. Then Aasatti. Maharishi Dayanand defines Aasatti as जिस पद के साथ जिसका संबंध है उसके समीप उस पद को बोलना या लिखना. So again, when we have things which may have many meanings, we need to find the closest and best fit or best fitting meaning. And we often find that. Like when we say Atma, we have no proper word for that in English. We refer to the soul. This question has come to me often. And even during my free trips to Toronto. When I say Ishwar, obviously we don't have the correct word for it, but the best fit word would be God. Because the concept of God, as it is understood in other religion or faith groups, is not the same as what is given in the Vedas. And a brief of it is given in the second principle of the Arya Samaj. So we need to go into that and probably come to the closest, best fit meaning or understanding. Another thing which we say in Hindi is man, and that we have no word for that in English. We used to refer to the mind, but man is not exactly the mind. Because man is a combination of both the mental and the emotional part of it. And we have no proper word for that. That's why we refer to generally the best fit or the closest meaning will come to the mind. So this is Taatparya, Aasatti. Then Taatparya. जिसके लिए वक्ता ने शब्द उच्चारण व लेख किया है उसी के साथ उस वचन व लेख को युक्त करना. Again, bringing that to more specifically to the context. As we know, words have many meanings, but going into the interpretation of that, we need to put the proper meaning. And if we go more further into the Satyartha Prakash itself, Maharishi Dayanand gives one example. Sandhav in Sanskrit means both horse and salt. If someone is sitting for lunch or dinner and he says Sandhav Lana, You bring the horse, obviously, he will make a fuss out of it. And if he's going for travel or he wants to go for a trip, it says Sandhavlana, and at that moment you bring the salt. So there are so many words like that. Like if I say one simple word, can, C-A-N, as a verb and as a noun, the meaning differs completely. It's not a question of only Sanskrit. We have it also in English or in all the languages across the world. Word is written the same way, probably pronounced differently, but the meaning also differs. Hindi and Sanskrit, it is pronounced as it is written. But you see the intonation of C-A-N as a verb and C-A-N as a noun. Another example would be see as a verb, S-E-E. But when the person is speaking, I see, and I take it to be S-E-A. It doesn't make sense. So to understand or to get on a better learning curve, remember Svaadhyaaya, Shravan, Manan, Nidhidhyaasana Saakshaatkaar. Shravan, active listening, but in the context of today, added active reading, learning. Manan, contemplation. Nidhidhyaasana, putting the questions. Saakshaatkaar, realize the knowledge. On that path, whatever we learn, we'll keep it to us for a lifetime. Second, it takes into the contextual application, understanding and application of the knowledge. Aakaaangshaa, Yogyataa, Aasatti, and Taatparya. Aakaaangshaa, there are things where we need to fill in the blanks because the speaker doesn't have the time to give the minute details. Now, to fill in the minute details, we need to look into how the flow is. Yogyataa, when I say burning, obviously it means heat or fire, things like that. If I say irrigation, it's obviously water. So we need to connect the things, dots, well. Then Taatparya, Aasatti. So if we don't have the proper words to fit in, let's look at the best fit or the closest ones. And then Taatparya, where words may have many meanings, we fit in the contextual application. That's the beauty of how Maharishi Dayananda unfolds the knowledge of the Satyartha Prakash. Often the Satyartha Prakash also is referred to as a critical study of our faith. But remember, the first part of the book, from the preface till chapter 10, Samula's 10 or chapter 10, it's on Mandan, Satya ka Mandan. It's pushing forward what the Vedas, the Upanishad, the Darshan Shastra, the Manusmriti, etc., the authentic books that corroborates with the Vedas, teaches us, including the Vedas. I always refer to that, the Vedas and the ancillary or allied texts, which we call in one word, Arsh Grantha. And now, within that bhumika or preface, Maharishi Dhanana has several gems of knowledge. One of them is from the Gita, Yatadagre vishamiva parinaame'mritopamam. True knowledge at first may seem like poison, but in the long run, when we understand it properly, this is nectar. And for readers of the Satyartha Prakash, understanding chapter 11, 12, 13, and 14, that is a forceful line which Maharishi Dhanana has written, quoting from the Gita. If we want to understand the Satyartha Prakash, for whatever we think is a forceful critic, we need to look at it in the right way and understand it well. It may look in the first stance as poison, but if you go into the depth of it and you find what is truth and what is untrue, what is not true, you'll find what is right and what is wrong. You reach the state of vivek buddhi, the discriminating faculty of the mind. And from there on, you'll be blessed with the knowledge of that. And he says, in all faith group, which has come after the Vedic era, the Vedic period, till the Mahabharata, after that, whatever has come, whatever is truth, the origin of it, you may look to it in the Vedas. And whatever you find as probably is not consistent or doesn't flow or is contradictory, that is the flavor that have been added by the founders of the faith. Now let's come to one thing which we understand from the whole world. The first thing when it comes to faith, is there one God or many gods? So when we say that there is only one God, Ishwar ek hai, anek nahi. The main name is Om and thousands of other names, each describing one of the characteristics or the actions or the nature of God, of Ishwar. When we say that, people don't agree. But when other faiths come to them and say there's only one God, they start putting the questions to themselves and then look for the understanding. It will tell you always be truthful. And in Yam Niyam it says Ahimsa Satya. The second of Yama is Satya, be truthful. And when we say you should not steal, and it's the third of the Yama, Asteya. You shouldn't commit adultery. That is the fourth of the Yama, Brahmacharya. You shouldn't accumulate beyond what is needed for a decent living. That is aparigraha. Purity of mind, body, and spirit is Sauch, the first of the Niyama. Be content with what you have rather than being dissatisfied with what you don't have. This is Santosh. Need to practice austerity so that you can always be compassionate towards others. That is Tapa. Always be on the learning curve, Svaadhyaaya. and surrender yourself to the laws of God, to the laws of nature, to the teaching of the Vedas. This is Ishwar Pranidhan. Always show compassion to others. This is Karuna. And the sutra from Yog Darshan says, Maitri Karuna Mudita Upekshana. Sukha Dukha Punya Punya. So this is where we need to connect to at least. I always tell people, know the basics, the foundations, and this is what the book brings to us. Satyartha Prakash by Maharishi Dayananda Saraswati. And the English version, this is the Light of Truth. Both of them can be downloaded free online. If you go to the website aryamantavya.com.in, also many websites of the Arya Samaj, and the Arya Samaj Jamnagar also, the website, they are downloadable from there. Even the Vedas can be downloaded online. The Vedas with the translation that were done by Maharishi Dayananda Saraswati. So let's connect back to that. That is the month of the Satyartha Prakash. We're left with 15 minutes. I'll